Okay, well, happy Sunday. It's noon. It's earlier than I usually do it, but after talking about it for so long, today is the day I'm going to blow Bill Wallace out of the water. And I understand he was a legitimate tough guy, a legitimate badass. He was absolutely a champion. I'm not taking any of that away from him. But he's either a lying sack of shit or he's delusional with Alzheimer's and needs help. Pick it. Now, I know right now there's a whole bunch of you pissed off. But let's remember what I said when I started this channel. Do not take me at my word on anything. Check your own premise. But if you check YouTube, there's a video out there that Bill is in. How Gracie fooled everyone. And then he spouts about 40 minutes of total bullshit. Because he can't say all of that now. And in a moment, I'm going to prove why. But don't take my word for it. For heaven's sakes, check it out yourself. Now, before we begin, there is no one on the internet that has been more critical of the Gracies and their bullshit than me. When the underground forum got created, I'm the one, don't listen to what they say, it's also bullshit, but I'm the one that got a judo forum created. And believe me, the Brazilian jiu-jitsu people did not want a judo forum there. But they created one at my request, and I ran it for a long time. And that's something we'll deal with down the road. But I assure you, the Brazilian jiu-jitsu people back then did not want to hear the legitimate truth about where their system came from and the fact that Horian was another lying sack of shit. Because you couldn't trust him to say anything that was the truth. And we'll deal with that down the road. But what's interesting, and you should look it up, when you watch the video that Bill Wallace made, he makes a lot of claims in there. And one of the ones that is hysterical is he talks about Horian Gracie's financial interest in the UFC working. Well, okay, Bill, but isn't it true that you had a financial interest in the UFC not working? You don't talk about that when you say Hoist fooled everybody. And Mr. Wallace, on that YouTube video, tells you all sorts of things that he says he knew because he was sitting right there. And he was the only one. And he knew the truth. And that's why they wouldn't let him commentate anymore. And on and on and on. To which I say, bullshit. That is either a lie or you're delusional and don't remember the truth. So let's get right to it. Black Belt Magazine has memberships for various, what's the word I'm looking for? Abilities to look back at old issues. It's there. Sign up because you're going to want to look. Because for everything Mr. Wallace says today, let me tell you what you either don't know or you have forgotten. First, Bill Wallace, Kathy Long, and Jim Brown were hired to do color commentary on the very first UFC. You don't have to take my word for that. It's here on YouTube. Look it up. Go watch. Really go watch. Because you got to see Bill Wallace and Kathy Long sitting there on camera looking like this. Because all of those amazingly effective karate kicks, you don't see any. All of those deadly karate blows, yeah, you don't see none of that either. You do see really brutal, hardcore combat. Some guy from the Netherlands kicks a sumo guy in the face, and you watch his tooth fly into the front row like a chiclet being spit out of his mouth. But everything you were told about the combat effectiveness of various karate styles, you didn't see shit of that in the ring. Nobody could pull it off. Now, here's what you all forgot. Bill Wallace in those days was a paid monthly columnist for Black Belt magazine. Don't take my word for that. Get yourself an internet membership with Black Belt magazine that lets you look at old issues. And by all means, check for yourself. Don't take me at my word. You check it out. Check your premise daily. Well, you see, first, absolutely, I was watching the first UFC. In those days, I had my own dojo, and it was about to get really uncomfortable because I was going to run in to both groups because I was judo and Japanese/USJA jiu-jitsu. So I had all of the Brazilian jiu-jitsu people doing their bullshit dojo storming, which you can see all over the internet with video, and they would come in and try to kick our ass, and I'd beat the shit out of them and send them home. But then we had all of the other martial artists pissed off at what Horian was saying, and they couldn't get a hold of the Gracie School. They didn't want to go to California, I guess. So they would come to my school and try to kick my ass. It was insane what was going on. But this is where it all started. UFC went. Now, let me remind you, just in case you forgot. Horian showed up with one of the best marketing lines in the history of advertising. Horian Gracie said, martial arts don't work in a real fight. Holy shit. Did that set everybody off. And then he started selling these Gracie in action videotapes to prove his point, to show that the Gracies were kicking everybody's ass. Well, okay. Then, instead of all sorts of people got pissed off. Again, get that Black Belt magazine subscription. Go back and read the letter columns. That's the first place you should always go because that tells you what the martial art world is going through at that time. So please give it a shot. And the reality is, when people were screaming how horrible it was that Rorion Gracie said martial arts don't work in a real fight, Rorion doubled down. Rorion issued the Gracie Challenge. And he said, come to a seminar, come to a lecture, come to our school in California. If you can kick our ass, one-on-one, unarmed, if you can kick our ass, you get $100,000. That was the first original Gracie Challenge. And again, get the damn Black Belt Magazine subscription. They sent one of their writers to the Gracie Academy to take the challenge. Now, they never told you in the challenge that it's best 2 out of 3 falls. And the bottom line is, they started getting more video to show these martial art people getting their ass kicked. And they did. The guy that came in as an author for Black Belt got crushed back to back. Never even came close. So I'm only saying this to say this was a huge thing. Hang on, I'm going to get something to drink. Forgive me. And if Mr. Wallace wants to talk about the financial stakes, hey, Bill, after UFC 1, how many people in the entire martial art world wanted to pay you money to learn how to kick somebody in the head? Answer. It was all over. You think Mr. Wallace wasn't concerned about his financial future? You think all those percussionary martial art people weren't pooping themselves? But hang on a second. Let me back it up a little bit. And if you get that membership I keep yelling at you to get, you can see it for yourself. If you go far enough back, Jun Rhee, big famous Taekwondo guy in Black Belt all the time, came up with a fascinating safety piece of equipment. It was foam rubber gloves you put on your hands and foam rubber boots you put on your feet. Now listen to your old Uncle Mark. You were not supposed to hit somebody with that. That wasn't the purpose. The purpose was you still did pulling your blows. You didn't hit anybody. But if there was a boo-boo, you had padding there now, and there was going to be less risk of an injury. Well, my memory is not as good as it used to be, guys. I'm 67 years old now. And long before now, Black Belt or somebody should have sat me down and turned the camera on. Because there's shitloads I could tell you. But it didn't take long. Couple of months tops. I saw the ads for it in Black Belt and saw exactly what it was for, knew how it was invented, but people were using it to knock the shit out of each other in about 2 months. And then, here's the big part. A lot of them, Chuck Norris and Joe Louis, Mr. Wallace, were going to places like Thailand and seeing Thai boxing. Now, keep in mind, karate, percussionary martial art, was based on a flawed premise. And that premise is this: what we do is so dangerous and deadly, we can't hit one another. And trust me, the schools love that. The students get bullshitted into believing they're learning this extremely deadly style. And everybody did breaking bricks and boards to prove that the punches and kicks were too deadly. But, and again, check the letter columns. Get your Black Belt Magazine subscription. They should take out ads here for the publicity I'm giving them right now. Read the damn letter columns. Because I remember, I can't tell you exactly, I don't remember it that clearly anymore at 67. But I remember the very first full contact karate tournament. Now, Chicago had been doing them for years, and everybody in Black Belt said that was reprehensible, that wasn't Budo, blah, blah, blah. But you had guys in Chicago doing full contact long before this. And at this very first full contact tournament, Chuck Norris was there fighting full contact. Joe Louis was there fighting full contact. I think Mike Stone was. You got to get the movie The Wrecking Crew with Dean Martin as one of his horrible Matt Helm movies. But because Bruce Lee was the fight director, you get to see all these famous martial art guys from the era because they play bad guys in the film. I digress. Let's go back. And they had the first official full contact tournament. And then they gave out championships. Joe Louis was world champion in his weight division. So was Chuck Norris. I think so was Mike Stone. And there were others. I think Skipper Mullins was in there. And I'm going to stop now, and I'm sorry. But here's what I want you to get. The traditional martial artists all did this. They were pissed as hell. That's not Budo. We aren't supposed to do that. But the practical martial artists were doing this. This is wonderful. This is real. We're all done pretending. And if you read the letter columns, you'll see the arguments go back and forth for a good long time. Why do I bring that up? Because the grapplers showed up and said, hey, we agree with you full contact guys. Can we play too? And eventually, through the UFC, they did. Now, the idea of the boxer fighting the wrestler is nothing new. It was actually part of vaudeville. Look it up. If you get a chance, sit down with our Uncle Gene. And Gene knows me. Ask him about Mark Tripp. He knows who I am. When I was a kid, he saved my ass when I was in Japan dealing with an asshole. And I wanted to go home. And Gene, my hand to God, the asshole, said they had just let him out of prison because he's a pyromaniac. And they only let him carry one match. And if I came home, he'd go burn my house down. Swear to God, ask him. Ask him. I had some asshole Japanese guy, because they all hate us. We dropped a nuclear bomb, 2 of them on their country. They don't like us. Talk to John Saylor sometime about what he went through. Alan Kowash, Bad News Brown. Yeah, ask about him over there and how many places wouldn't let him come in Because if you did stupid stuff like this, he'd kill you. Somebody was choking John, and John tapped, and he didn't let go. And Alan Kowaj hit this guy so hard, he lifted him from the floor. When he was in WWF in those days, nobody messed with Andre the Giant. Everybody was afraid. Andre started giving shit to Alan. Alan knocked him out. The big, tall, nobody could kick his ass. Alan, one punch, took him out. And if you read the book from the British Bulldogs, Davy Boy and all those guys, they tell you those stories. And they tell you that Alan was so scary when the Rougeaus did something in the locker room. And Alan came in and said, "What the fuck are you guys doing?" The Rougeaus didn't even change. They got in their car and they went to Canada. So please don't take me at my word. Talk to these people. Well, grapplers showed up and they said the same thing. But guys, as I've said before, every 20 years or so, we have to redo all of the truths we learned before, but everybody's forgotten. Wrestling became what we see in the WWE and stuff like that now because a real legitimate wrestling match against a couple of skilled wrestlers is going to take a couple of hours. And nobody's going to sit still and watch that. So that's when they started. The wrestlers started challenging the boxers. And that became uninteresting because the boxers always got their asses kicked. The wrestler would take them down and then they'd screw them on the mat. So what happened with the Greasies is nothing new. Kanu did it in 1886 when he got rid of all those bullshit jiu-jitsu styles that people proclaim today as wonderful and worthwhile, but they didn't understand Kanu's point. And I'll say it again right here. The way you defeat these deadly techniques that no one can practice because you'd be wiping out your partners is with safe things that you can practice full power, full speed against the resisting opponent and not kill him. Now, even today, the Krav Maga people, and it's all bullshit. If you believe the Israeli soldiers train in Krav Maga for a year, bullshit. No military force wastes that amount of time on unarmed combat. That's bullshit. And I'm sick of hearing it. It's like when Paul Vunak, and I'm sorry, but screw you, Paul, you've been lying for years. You did not create a Navy SEAL combat program. I had lunch with Richard Marcinko back in the days when I hung out with Mark Scott. And Richard Marcinko, as you should know, was the company commander, first one, for SEAL Team 6. And he told me straight up, they weren't doing any knife fighting. They weren't doing any unarmed combat. They were learning how to shoot people. And according to Richard Marcinko, they shot more rounds than the entire Marine Corps did because getting good at shooting people was what they wanted. Now, yes, once people are at their unit and they've got funds and they want to spend them, they bring people in so they can hang out with them. Dan Severin did a couple of special forces things. I know, because regardless of what Mr. Severin tries to say and imply, we worked with him pretty extensively for UFC 5. And when the time comes and I talk about that, I'll show you the pictures that pretty much ends his nonsense. So, because for whatever, well, I know why he doesn't want to say we trained him. He never paid the money he owes me, ever. So, go ahead, Dan. You and Don Fry, you act like you guys went to Arizona and that's the only place you trained. And in a couple of weeks, I'm going to hold up a crap load of pictures that show what you're saying isn't true. So let's get back to Bill Wallace. First, watch the entire UFC 1. Watch that Bill Wallace and Kathy Long can't say anything. They're in shock. All of the martial arts shit they thought they were going to see was right out of the window. And I mean things like you had Keith Hackney in there, and he's a fifth dan in Kempo, and he does all sorts of makiwara training. You know, the things that supposedly toughen up your hands and make them into lethal weapons. I have somebody calling me. Hang on. I'm live right now for the martial art thing. How can I help you?
Sorry, I figured you were done already. All right, talk to you later.
Bye. Well, in UFC 1, we learn a reality, and I want you to watch the first 5. After that, all of the rules change because of that goat fuck between Hoist and Ken Shamrock in UFC 5. But anybody who punched, because you weren't allowed to tape your hands and you weren't allowed, you could put a glove on if you wanted, but if you didn't tape your hands and you hit somebody in the head, you broke your hand. Period. Anybody who punched. Ken Shamrock busted his hand so bad that in every subsequent UFC, he busted it again. It wasn't until they wrapped the hands and they put MMA gloves on, what's called that now, people stopped breaking their hands. So when Mr. Wallace says, oh, Hoist Gracie never threw a punch, did he win or not, Bill? I understand he didn't fight the way you wanted him to fight so you could make money at a seminar. But he didn't do that because you break your hand when you do that. Period. So, in fact, watch it. Don't take my word for it. They bring in a fourth person who clearly is familiar with Gracie Jiu-Jitsu to do color commentary because everybody else is just blown away. But here's all you need to know. And if you get that Black Belt magazine subscription, you can access all of the old magazines. What did Bill Wallace say in the very first column right after UFC 1? Did he say all of the bullshit he's saying now? No, he did not. So the question to Mr. Wallace is, were you lying then or are you lying now? Because what you said in that column does not line up with what you're saying now. And what did he say in the very first column? Number one, he hated the UFC. He was against the whole thing. Well, no shit. The percussionary martial artist sees his seminar money circling the drain. So he's anti what happened. Well, no shit. What did he say? He said two things in that column. Go look it up. Don't take my word for it. He said, A, the mat was too soft, so the percussionary martial artist could not get their feet set to throw those deadly punches and kicks. And the other thing he said was the tarp was too loose, and that was there to give an advantage to the Gracies. That's what he claimed. The shit he's saying now, the very first column, right after UFC won, he didn't say any of that. Go look it up. So, if he had supposedly this inside knowledge that he knew the whole thing was a scam, why didn't you say it in your first column, Bill? Why were you bitching about soft mats and loose tarps? And let me assure you, all of his fans, all of the percussionary martial arts schools across America all started saying the same thing because they saw what was coming. Nobody was going to want to learn how to kick somebody in the head anymore. They were going to see that shit don't work. And it's interesting to point out how many of these bullshit traditional martial arts schools all said, oh, we're teaching ground fighting now. We are going to teach the secret ground fighting of Kung Fu or the samurai or some other bullshit. Because that's what people wanted to know after they saw Hoist kicking ass. But it gets worse. Bill never let up. Read all of his columns back then. He never says the UFC is a good idea. Well, yeah, because it makes percussionary martial artists look stupid. They can't get the job done. Now, in his How Gracie Fooled Everybody, that bullshit he put here on YouTube, he says, oh, they kicked me out of the UFC because they didn't want me telling the truth. Again, sorry, Bill, but you know that's bullshit. I know it's bullshit, and I'll prove it. When you started being as negative as you were, when you started being as anti-UFC as you were, Horian put it right to you. Get your ass in the cage. Show us how it's done. You didn't do that, did you, Bill? Lots of people over the years you were writing that column told you, get your ass in the cage. Don't talk the talk. Get in there. You're the world champion. You're a middleweight champion. Get in there and kick ass. He never did. I leave that to you guys to decide on that. But if you look at UFC 2, when it was pretty clear that Mr. Wallace was not going to get into the octagon, Horian went to Japan. And Horian got the All Japan Karate Champion. So let me stop right here. Does that qualify for you? Wouldn't you say that is a legitimate karate master? Because All Japan Champion means you got in the ring with all sorts of people and kicked their ass. And the guy's name was Ishihara. And he wore his karate gi. And they didn't even make him fight somebody else. He only had to have one match against Hoist Gracie. And Hoist took him out in under 10 minutes. Took him down, choked him with his gi. Now, Wallace makes a big thing about that too. Come on, Bill, you did judo. Choking with the gi is a standard thing. Don't act like somehow it's cheating. But you wouldn't get in the ring, Bill. You wouldn't back up all of the bullshit you were saying. So they got the All Japan champion, put him in the ring for UFC 2, and Hoist handled him like he was nothing more than a child. Never saw a kick, never saw a punch, none of that shit. Hoist took him right down and choked him out. Now, Mr. Wallace, you wanted so much for the Gracies to get shown up. You bought into the biggest martial art fake, phony bullshit ever. And the name was Bart Vale. Bart Vale got on the covers of every martial art magazine because supposedly he was some national champion of shoot fighting in Japan. And Bart Vale said, oh no, you have to know how to punch, and you have to know how to kick, and you have to do all of that. And all of the percussionary martial arts schools, all of the Black Belt magazine kind of people, I thought, oh shit, wonderful. Somebody is going to help us keep what students we have left. But your problem was, because you wanted to hear what he was saying, you never checked him out. Shoot fighting in Japan is as real as the WWE, you ass. And when Bart Vale finally got into this country, and I think it was CBS, everybody was trying to get a hold of this fighting in the cage shit, they gave him a tomato can. The guy he was fighting was a nobody. So they were pretty sure, CBS, that they were going to build up their champion. What happened the very first time Bart Vale got into the cage on national television? The tomato can kicked Bart Vale's ass, took him right out. And again, get the damn subscription. Watch how quickly he shows up, and then nobody talks about him anymore. Sorry. But what Bill Wallace said in his own flippin' column right after UFC 1 is not what he says on his YouTube video. It's extremely different. Now, again, when I talk about the Gracies, I will tell you things about edited video, about videos you're never going to see. I'm not a huge Gracie fan. The things they said were lies and reprehensible, especially about their connection to judo. But right now, I'm talking about Bill Wallace. And you cannot say the mats were soft and the tarp was loose, and then 30 years later say, oh, everybody was handpicked, and those people were picked so they would lose. Well, why didn't you say that in that column, Bill? All of the things you say now, the things you say that you claim is why you were not allowed to come back and do commentary anymore, which is ridiculous. All you have to do is watch UFC 1, and you'll see, of course, they're not going to invite you back. You were less than inept. I mean, it was awful. Just watch. Because you couldn't handle what you were looking at. Because the reality, Bill, most real life fights look a whole lot like a hockey fight. Because if you don't hang on to the guy as you're punching the shit out of him, they'll run away. And people don't want that to happen. So, like it or not, they're all grappling. Somebody's got a hold of your clothing as they're knocking the shit out of you. And all of this stuff with the fancy stances and the kicks and all of that, it's all bullshit. Because you're not going to pull it off in that kind of an attack. Sorry. But I have all sorts of people really pissed off at me because of what I was going to say today. And to all of them, I have one reply. I just told you the truth. If you doubt me, get that Black Belt magazine subscription and go look for yourself. I dare you. Read what Wallace says in every single column after UFC 1. They are all negative. They are all wrong. They are all against what's going on because he's losing seminar money. The thing he says about Horian is true about him. People didn't want to learn that shit anymore. Now, he then, on that YouTube video, starts talking about today and how different it is, and at least they punch and kick now. Hey, Bill, do you even know what you're talking about? What I'm talking about is when the UFC was NHB, no holds barred. Today, it is MMA, mixed martial arts. But let's go back how thrilled you were when your hero, Maurice Smith, finally won the UFC. And he won it by kicking Mark Coleman in the face and knocking him out. You were thrilled about that. See, you told everybody. Don't take my word for it. Read his own columns. But your problem is, in those days, they had changed the rules. It was supposed to be as much as a real fight as it could be. But in that fight, Coleman would get on top, wasn't able to finish, and the referee called that a stalled position and stood him up. And every single time he stood him up, Maurice Smith got another chance to score a knockout blow. But if it was a real fight, nobody would be standing anybody up. But yeah, after about 4 or 5 restarts, Maurice Smith shin kicked Mark Coleman right in the face and won the match. And my feeling when it happened was, big deal. This isn't no holds barred anymore. And it's why now that everything is really locked in to mixed martial arts, I'm not all that interested. Now, yes, you have an equal amount of total idiots. The Krav Maga people, all of the so-called real fight combative people, all saying, oh, you can't use mixed martial arts. That's a sport. They have rules. A real fight doesn't have rules. And nobody has the balls to tell these guys, excuse me. So how many eyes did you gouge out last night to master your eye gouges? Because again, guys, it all comes down to money. And right now, and I called this 10 years ago, the big thing is combatives because the baby boomers are old and people are trying to take their stuff. But if you believe in Krav Maga or Sismata or any of that nonsense, good luck with that. But if you think the Israelis are spending a year at Krav Maga, I got a bridge I've been trying to sell in Brooklyn for years. That's it. That's the truth. Don't take my word for it. Get your membership with Black Belt Magazine. Go in there and start reading the letters column. Read Bill Wallace's own columns right after these things happen. And you'll see it's not the same. So you guys take care, and I'll see you down the road. Bye-bye for now.